Hello everyone and welcome to English 112 Online for Week 3. First, I want to remind all of you, as I'm sure you're aware, that your advertisement analysis is due by Sunday, September 23rd at 11:59 p.m. You will submit this assignment through the Save Assign link in this week's course content. I will also have for you your grades for weeks 1 and 2, including discussion board forums and the quizzes, and of course your peer review by the end of the week, so look out for those. First, I want to start today's lecture with revisiting a couple of important components of ethos, or argument by character. Remember, one of the most important components of ethos is decorum, which is, plainly speaking, just the practical art of fitting in. As you recall from Quiz 2, I asked you about how Eminem displayed decorum to win the love of his audience. Of course, we know that he fits in with his audience because he uses gesture, language choice, of course his dress, and the concession to establish his credibility with a crowd that otherwise might be hostile, and to, at the same time, discredit his opponent Papa Doc. Now, another component of ethos is practical wisdom, which is just basically showing your audience that you exhibit good sense. You make reasonable choices, and so they will want to follow you. A third component of ethos is what is called disinterested goodwill. Now, there are a few things that go into displaying disinterested goodwill. One of them is you might want to employ the reluctant conclusion, which is basically just to seem as though you've arrived at your opinion only after being confronted by overwhelming evidence that steers you into that direction of making that choice. Another way you could show disinterested goodwill is by claiming a personal sacrifice. That is, the choices you're proposing not only will benefit your audience greatly, but might actually hurt you. A great way to exhibit selflessness. The third part of disinterested goodwill is that you might want to play the dubitatio route, show doubt in your rhetorical skills by being plain spoken. It is often the most believable and enhances your credibility or character with your audience greatly. Now next, we come to pathos, or argument by emotion. And coincidentally enough, pathos will be the password for your quiz this week. Aristotle argued that pathos is the most persuasive appeal. He said that if you can control the mood, you can control the audience. Several things go into making an argument based on emotion. You first want to think about their beliefs or values. And these are usually based on what your audience has experienced in the past and what they expect to happen. So you want to maybe focus on their belief systems. Another way to harness an argument by emotion is to employ the use of storytelling. This gives the audience a virtual experience of reality. You're painting a picture for them. It also plays on past experiences like belief and is best told in the first person or I voice. You may also want to employ volume control, and this you might want to keep in mind for your presentations at the end of the semester. Volume control underplays emotions and makes the speaker seem as if he or she is struggling to contain their emotion. It also builds suspense. If one begins a speech quietly, this physically draws the audience closer to him or her because they want to hear what they're saying. And this also will allow them to wonder what's going to happen next. Next, we have gaining the higher ground. Remember, we want to create deliberative arguments based on what is best for the most people. And this includes the advantageous, which is the uber topic of deliberative argument. This deals with choices and is told in the future tense. It talks about what's best for the audience, and it gets the audience to believe that the choices you offer them are the best. Now, one way to spot the advantageous is to use things such as the commonplace and to also listen for it in your intended audience, because it's all about their language. Commonplaces are otherwise known as cliches, and these mirror the audience's beliefs or values. So when you listen to people speaking, do they repeat certain phrases or words over and over again? This can give you some indication of what it is that they strongly believe in or value. Another form is the commonplace label. Now, you might want to think of this as bumper sticker rhetoric. So, for example, when you're driving around and you see those bumper stickers that say, my kid is an honor roll student at X junior high, or even conversely, my kid beat up your honor roll student, what these bumper stickers are really telling us are the various values that the driver of that car has. So, for example, it might be education, valuing the future of one's children, or valuing the thug life in one's children. Again, the beliefs and values switch as your audience does. Another thing to keep in mind when scouting your audience for commonplaces is if they reject your proposals or your choices, you want to listen to what kind of language they use when they do so, and then, when formulating your counter-argument, try to mirror that repeated code language. Again, remember, simple speech is often the most convincing. Be plain spoken when you're trying to arouse an audience's emotions. We very rarely have heated discussions using polysyllabic words. You want to make sure that everyone understands exactly what it is you're saying. When we think about arousing emotions, anger often comes up because, of course, our goal is to get our audience to act on the choices. So playing upon anger often gets them roused to the point of action. You could do this by playing on their sense of belittlement, he's got it so good, I don't, and also playing on the lack of concern of the other guy for the audience's problems. We also want to play on patriotism. Now, this isn't just love of one's country. Broadly speaking, patriotism refers to group affiliation or identity. And one way to play upon an audience's sense of patriotism is to compare them with a successful rival. But also want to consider emulation. What kind of role models does your audience look up to, and how can you imitate the values, beliefs, mannerisms, etc. of those role models in order for your audience to look up to you? Another thing you might want to consider is sneaking up on the audience's mood. There's nothing that sucks the air out of a joke more than telling someone that it's going to be funny in advance. We're already prepared for it, and so even in our stubbornness, we're already less inclined to be open to what otherwise might be a humorous joke. But again, you want your audience to act, so playing on their anger alone is not going to get them to be receptive. So a few things that you might want to keep in mind when trying to turn an audience's anger into receptiveness is using the passive voice. This redirects anger and implies that something happened on its own. I didn't break the vase, it broke. The backfire is another useful tactic. This allows you to overplay a screw-up, which prevents the wrath of an authority. If you overly put it like, oh my god, it's the end of the world, I didn't take the garbage out, I am so sorry, I am such a screw-up. Well, if you overplay the emotion, people are more likely to give you a break. And then, of course, there is humor. Urbane, wit, facetiousness, and banter, which is used as a calming device. When people are more relaxed, they're more open to reception.